Welcome everyone to our webinar where we are talking about El Camino, which means the way, a famous pilgrimage that's in Portugal and Spain. And we have with us today Tim and Eve Austin. They're in different locations on this webinar, but we've brought them some questions when it comes to El Camino. And one of the things that we want to accomplish in the Institute for Ministerial Wholeness is to look at formation in a holistic way. The spiritual component is a given, but we also realize that we are people that have bodies, we have minds, we have souls, which means relationships and emotions and vocations. And so we want to look at ourselves in a holistic way. And so I was sharing with Tim when I think about a time and a place where really all of these five areas can really be engaged, it seems that one of the better places could be on a pilgrimage. And the word pilgrimage is not real popular in many church traditions. My church tradition is the Assemblies of God, and I don't think I've ever heard the word pilgrimage in the Assemblies of God, unless maybe it was associated with pilgrims around Thanksgiving. But not trying to be funny, but actually, it's a place of not much knowledge or understanding. And so we want to weave this in, like we want to weave in contemplative prayer and spiritual direction, a lot of things our tradition isn't familiar with. And so Tim and Eve are both veterans when it comes to pilgrimage. And Linda and I are going to be joining them September 18th to the 25th of this year on this pilgrimage in El Camino. I think we're starting in Portugal, aren't we, Tim?
We are. We're
We're
starting
going
to
to make our
do a
way from there.
Portuguese route.
And Linda and I are in training. So we're going to be talking about that. So we're going to be trying to cover a number of questions that I've sent Tim and Eve when it comes to looking at this in a holistic way, in body, mind, soul, and spirit. And so with that, Tim and Eve, let's get started. And again, if anybody that's on today has any questions, please put them in the chat box. I'll read them to make sure that they're recorded. And for those that watch this webinar later, they can also hear your question and then hear Tim and Eve's response to it. So let's just begin in that progression. Let's begin with the body dynamic, the physical preparation. And so what kind of training did the both of you do to prepare yourselves for El Camino? Or did you not do some training and realize that I should have trained for this a little more before I got started? So help us out here.
Well, Eve will share the right thing to do, but I will have to confess that the first time I did the El Camino de Santiago was we were doing a section in Spain, which is known for it's a little to be a little bit more intense, more more hills to climb and so forth. Well, it was a last minute, spur of the moment decision on my part, not on hers. She'd been planning for a long time. And so we went with one other couple, and this long story, but the ladies decided to invite the guys along last minute. So it's not all our fault. But I had like I don't know, was it a couple weeks to to get ready?
I think 4 weeks.
That's not how you tr want to treat your body for the El Camino. So that's the wrong way to do it. But I survived and I learned some lessons. And for my second try at it, I think I did a little better. So
Okay. How much time, for instance, uh, should you give yourself? Like Linda and I kind of typed into 67-year-old male, 64-year-old female will be hiking El Camino September 18th to 25th. And what is a workout schedule? And it spit it out for us. So we're
Nice.
actually following that. And
Good.
we've already started and loving it, but what would you say?
Yeah, so I definitely recommend starting soon, starting as soon as you register. And if you do register to do it with us on the Couples Camino, or if you did another one with the Way Between, they have men's only, they have women's only trips, and a training guide comes with your registration. So as soon as you register, you get the training guide and you get their whole preparation guide. And the Simons who direct the Way Between have been doing Caminos for maybe a decade now. And so they just have lots of their experience packed into the training guide. And so, yeah, Tim and I just pretty much follow that. But basically, The 12-week mark, which for us going mid to late September, we're gonna be needing to follow that guide, the 12-week guide, starting early June. So all of June, July, and August we'll be following that guide. And basically it's just telling you to, it's not basically, but it's telling you to do a few things. Be walking a number of hours each week, and it's recommending 4 days a week. So 4 days a week, 1 to 4 hours at a time. And then what's happening on the guide, it's basically an Excel sheet, and it's showing you
Mm.
that you want to start including things like hills and also increasing the distance. So at least 1 day a week, that walk is getting longer and longer and longer. Our longest day, is it 12 miles, Tim?
Between 12 and 13, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So you want to keep that in mind, is that's going to be our longest day. And that's not walking straight through. That's why 1 to 4 hours is kind of that mark, because we'll walk mostly for like 2 or 3 hours, and then we'll take a break, and then another 2 or 3 hours, and then it'll be lunchtime. And then another 2 or 3 for a break, and another 2 or 3, and we'll be done. So and the pace doesn't really matter, because this is not a half marathon or a 10K or something where we're concerned about the time. Literally, we are just going to get to the afternoon's destination, and if that takes us 4 hours or 8 hours, that part doesn't matter. We're just gonna pace ourselves, take our time, but we want our bodies to be able to do the distance, even if we're not fast about it. The thing I would recommend for now, walking is helpful now, of course, moving your body in any way. On the rest day on the guide is stretching, yoga, something like that. So something that's a no impact movement kind of a day that just helps your body to stay limber or get limber, and kind of works out the kinks from the week. But one thing that I would recommend now, like we're in the middle of winter here in Idaho, and Tim is walking the dog a lot on the icy paths, and he's a champ for doing that. I'm in the gym because I'm not loving the icy walks myself. And so I would recommend some strength training, or some training with some weight, adding some weight to that, because you'll have a pack, so you will be carrying some weight. And so that's part of the reason of that. And then another reason for doing some strength training is because the way to protect your joints, which for when you're walking, you got your ankles, your knees, and your hips mostly that you're thinking about. The way to protect those joints is by strengthening the muscles around them and near them, and the ones that get those all working in sync. And so, yeah, strength training is going to be helpful in doing that, because then, yeah, your joints will be supported well as you hit the trail. So,
And this is just great information for after El Camino too. I mean, don't
mhm,
stop, continue on,
mhm,
especially the older you get and all the things that you mentioned, but bones, as far as bone density and strength.
mhm,
And for those of us that are getting older, yeah, these are the kind of things you have to think about. So I think this is a great formation for life as well. So great,
mhm,
great stuff. So
mhm,
what kind of equipment, and this is body area, this physical area, what kind of equipment are we talking about?
mhm. Yeah, so the equipment guide, sorry, I want to say one more thing on the
Sure.
physical training part of it. Once you get into that 12-week range, so June, July, August, and into September for our September journey, you are going to want to put two longer walks together. So if that's maybe like a Friday, Saturday, like we get the really long days here in the north, so we can do a Friday after work. We can do like 6, 7 miles, and then we can hike again on Saturday for 8 or 9 miles. So you want to start putting those together so that your body starts to feel what that feels like. Two long walks in a row. one day and then the next day, because it feels very different than if you just do a long hike every Saturday, for instance, and you have 6 days in between where you're doing like 3 miles a day. That's going to feel very different. So
Okay.
anyway, back to the equipment. There's an equipment guide that you get when you register. There is, yeah, a packing guide. There's all kinds of like, yeah, just all kinds of great information. Some people do the Camino with like a 33-liter pack with everything in it. So it's their 6 days on the Camino, all their clothes, snacks, shoes, everything in that pack. Some people do bigger than a 33-liter. Tim and I chose to do our day packs. My day pack is an 11-liter pack. And do you remember the size of yours, Tim? It's bigger.
Yeah, a little bit bigger, but not much.
Yeah, anyway, Tim's, 4 inches taller than me. And yeah, anyway, so it goes with the size of your body. And if you don't already have a day pack or the pack that you're thinking to take, I really recommend something like an REI or one of these, outfitters. We have Shields here where there's people to help you. You're going to go in, you're going to try on different packs, and they're going to help you fit it to your body size. If you're overseas and you're ordering online, then there's measurement ways to measure, like, I don't know, hip to shoulder and those kinds of things. So anyway, Tim and I chose to do day packs because we have some back and shoulder issues historically, and we just didn't want to
Yeah.
exacerbate those with the heavier pack.
Mm.
So
That's
basically, then
great.
in your day pack, you have your layers. If you need a windbreaker or a poncho if it rains, you need snacks. If you decide to do a change of socks and shoes, that's in there. Of course, your documents and your walking sticks. We do walking sticks as well. So yeah, it's not a heavy pack. It's not anything that gave us any kind of back and shoulder issues at all.
So you could go to a Bass Pro, a Cabela's, places that
Right.
do outfitting REI, like you mentioned. And
Hmm.
be people
Yeah.
there that could help you with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Great.
And
And
don't feel pressure to buy from those people. I mean, you can literally just say, hey, I'm just wanting to try on packs today and see which brands and which sizes fit my body build. And they're great, usually great people. I mean, yeah, if you buy a pack from them, that's nice too, but they're helpful. That's what they're there for. So just feel free to go in and try on for size.
very good. Let's move into the more of the mental dynamic, unless there's anything else in the physical area that you want to address. And you've been alluding to like a schedule, and I believe it'd be good for us to mention at the end what you're talking about so people can go there and check it out. Um,
Hmm.
so that'd be good. And then plus, we've also put in our email addresses in the chat box for those of you that are on now, so you can see Tim and Eve's address. You can see how you can reach me at info@iamwholeness.org. But Tim and Eve, for those that won't have the chat box available, could you just each share your email address so people could write you? And we talked about this ahead of time that you'd be happy to
Sure.
answer questions.
Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, the
absolutely.
only other thing I'll say on the equipment side of it is your shoes are pretty much like the most important piece of equipment, I would say. And so like Tim and I already have the shoes that we will wear next September, and we're going to do all of our training in those shoes. And
Yeah.
that's just so they're nice and worked in. You would never want to wear a new pair of shoes or even a almost new pair of shoes. You want them to be all broken in and really comfortable.
Mhm.
And what we've chosen is trail runners. They're
Mhm.
different brands, the brands that we prefer, but a trail runner is a low top. It looks like a tennis shoe, but it's got the grip of a hiking boot. It's got more tread on the bottom. And we did do hiking boots, actual hiking boots, our first Camino. And for both of us, they were just too heavy. Tim's were high tops.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're hard to pack. We
Mm.
bring a second pair. So when you're wearing your second pair, then you've got this heavy pair of hiking boots. The high tops are hard to air out at the end of the day. They dry um, slower. The trail runners or a low top is going to dry and air out faster anyway, there's a lot of reasons why, but basically whatever shoe you choose it soon and wear it often.
That's
Get it
great
all
information.
worked in.
Yeah.
And Mark,
Okay.
I was going to say too on the preparation side and the equipment and these things are all like Eve said in the guide. But one other thing we do with the once we have everybody registered, and which starts I believe would start for us if we're doing a September Camino, the Zoom calls, Eve. I believe those would start in maybe April.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we have a series of Zoom calls with the group that's registered, and that's really helpful too because over the course of the spring and the summer we're connecting, so we're getting to know each other, which is great. You know, if we're strangers, you know, or even just kind of reconnecting with people we do know, but also just throwing out things that have worked for us or you know, we had a great time just on the Zoom calls talking about, hey, I found this could be really good, you know, something for my backpack or something for the trail, a snack or certain things like. So that was really helpful just in terms of preparation, being able to have those touch points.
Okay. And so the email address is it's for Tim, it's Tim at ENCOMPASSLIFE coaching.com. And then for Eve, it's eve.snow.austin@gmail.com. So we just want to make sure we got that on the recording. And for those of you that are on with us, you can go ahead and write those down. And again, feel free to write Tim and Eve for all the particulars of the information that are being discussed today. So let's move into the mind dynamic of this, the mental preparation. Um, so let me ask you, how did you mentally prepare yourself before? And then was there any kind of mental fatigue on the trail while you were going about and actually doing this? So how did you prepare before and then during the pilgrimage itself?
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of so in preparation, sure, like just for me, maybe I overthink. You know, we're all wired differently, but for me, some of the struggle was overthinking, overanalyzing, trying to, you know, make sure I have every detail covered. And you know, we're going to, you know, and I had to just kind of release some of that. And that's a mental exercise for me, just being able to release things, hold things a little bit more loosely, do my due diligence, but then also just trust the process. And the process is led, you know, just kind of leaning into God's grace and goodness through the process. I mentally prepared probably more than anything on my walks. I kind of put myself, even as we were preparing over the summer for the Camino and doing our walks and hikes. For me, that was, and this goes a little bit into the spiritual and emotional piece, but for me, it was a releasing time, a receiving time. We had this exercise we did even on the Camino as a group where we we released and received, and for me,
Mhm.
that was I was doing that in preparation as well, just releasing some of those mental and emotional things I was struggling with, whether it was anxiety, fears, um, you know, what ifs, you know, those kinds of areas, just kind of continuing to let those go and hold it loosely. So one of the things too is just being able to accept the gift of surprise. And I think training ourselves, even, you know, in training, really being intentional about the art of noticing, noticing the small details, because that's going to show up on the Camino. The little thing, the remarkable, the amazing things out there, the vistas, the beauty of architecture, creation, nature, all of that. But then oftentimes you're directed to a butterfly or a flower or something that's just also very amazing, but we can easily miss. So for me, that was an exercise I was trying to, and I think just get more, get, yeah, being able to notice more and look for those gifts that surprise us along the way that we didn't expect, and let go of some of those expectations that um, we're holding on to, because then when we do that, I think we can maybe hold things to just be a little more open-handed, what God
Mm,
wants to show
Mm,
us and
yeah,
do in us. Yeah.
right, right.
mhm.
That's great.
Yeah.
Um,
I would say another mind space thing that could be helpful is to practice digital detox ahead of time and all along the way, because we are going to encourage that, slash require that for the days on the Camino. And so yeah, a lot of times if I'm on a walk on my own, I'm listening to a podcast, an audiobook, or I'm talking to a friend. And so I have to, in the training time, be intentional to at least have some of my walks not be that, so that it's more what Tim is saying. I'm tuning in more to what's around me instead of what's the noise in my ear. And then when Tim and I do our hikes together, our longer hikes together, we do digital detox. So yeah, we're not on our phones, we're not listening to something, we're just yeah, either talking or walking in silence. And we will have portions of each day be silence and solitude. So that's a good thing, which I know now that pulls us into, the soul and spirit part of preparation. But I just think, yeah, we gotta think about how the mind space of that works too, because if I think like, oh, I can't be off my phone all day because, what if my kids need to get a hold of me, or I can't, yeah, anyway, I can't do these things that I'm used to doing. Okay, yeah, it's going to feel different, it's going to feel awkward, maybe, or whatever, but you can do it, we can do it. And that's a mind space thing. I think is a good starting place for that, of like, yes, I can do this and I will practice it, and then it
mm,
will start to feel more comfortable and even wonderful. So,
that's
Mm,
excellent advice because when I go to the gym, I will listen often. I'm on a treadmill and or I'm lifting and I'm listening to a podcast.
mhm,
I've gotten away from music, but I can hear other people's things going even sometimes, and
mhm,
I don't think we consider that because that's so much a part of our culture and our way of life, especially exercising. But a part of the Camino, a part of the way is to hear from God, and then you're also with other people in community, and God's going to speak through them at times, or maybe God's going to speak something to us that we're just going to be sharing, or just kind of the whole theodrama of it, kind of an improv as I'm kind of seeing all this. You never know, but that's kind of the mystery of it all. And that's a good thing because you're putting yourself in a position of vulnerability to hear from God and with other people. I
yeah.
don't like that, but it's often the most healthy thing for us, and
mm,
in so many different ways, spiritually and soul wise, as well as mentally.
yeah.
That's
Hmm.
excellent. Well, you made a great transition, Eve, with that. So let's move into the next quarter of this, because we're probably getting into some things that are going to take a little more time. And again, if there's anything in the body area or the mental area, please contact Tim and Eve. You contact me, and if I can't answer the question, I will certainly refer you to them. But let's look into the soul area, and for us, that's more of the relational, emotional preparation. And so, were there any key moments when you were out there the last couple times that you can reflect on, with connection with other people, that really shaped your experience? Again, you're doing this with others, with each other. Maybe talk about that, and then also carrying over into the other people that were with you.
Mm. Uh, One thought came to mind when you're doing it as a group, Mark. It's really gives you that added benefit of leaning into relationships
Mm,
and great conversation along the way, but also this whole area of personal reflection and solitude and stillness and that noticing piece maybe. So what we found, was really a great way to kind of structure the day would to be kind of have blocks of time set apart for walking together as couples. You can do it as a group, individuals, but just having that block of time of walking together, but then being intentional about setting apart other blocks of time for silence and solitude along the path, along the road. So that was harder. It's harder for some people to lean into that piece. So you find both. Like I could stay in silence and solitude all day long and not talk to anybody, right? Others on the trail, they would find that very hard to do, and they would want to be, in conversation and all along the way and be together. And so to accommodate both styles and approaches, we found this to be really helpful and helped with because we're replenishing in different ways, right? I realize I need to be replenished and renewed and encouraged through conversations as well as the silence and solitude piece. So for me, that was an added benefit. But
Mm.
yeah, anything else there, Eve?
Add a quick
Yeah.
something here. I missed a question from Sharon, and let's interject this in. And I think it does tie in the relational dynamic. But Sharon asks, "Do I understand you're taking a group, but it's for couples only? I've walked the Francis Camino twice, but would love to join the Portugal Camino. Thank you." So, why don't you address that and then also talk about the options that could be there for Sharon, because this is a couples pilgrimage, but you also have a men's and a women's coming up too.
Yeah, we do.
Mm.
We have in partnership with the Way Between, we have a men's and a women's also coming up. Um, They are not, they are doing northern Spain routes for the men's and women's this year. So the only Portuguese route being taken is by the couples. So we get that space this year, Eve and I. But we can certainly, keep her posted, keep Sharon posted around any Portuguese route plans that come up, or if we hear of any.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And really going on the way between and subscribing to or following them will be the best way to do that, because then you see what routes are what plans are coming up and the dates and all the information for those. So I
I
would
can put
recommend
that
that.
link in the chat as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be
thank you.
good to put that link in there for everyone, and then we can also verbally share that also, Tim and Eve.
Mm,
So let's
okay.
continue on. I really love the whole idea of the silence and solitude component. Of course, this is a couple one, so you're there with your spouse, and then there's other people there. So you're kind of like looking at almost three different kinds of journeying along the way uh,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to self and community. It sounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I like to think of it as like the layers of, what's happening with you and the Lord, you and your spouse, you and yourself, and then really those four layers is, you and that community. And there's other community too, because there's other pilgrims and you end up seeing some of the same ones if you stop at the same place for lunch or you stay at the same hostel in at the nighttime, and you're visiting with other people. So anyway, there's all these opportunities of I think it's iron sharpening iron. Proverbs 17:17, I think it is, just yeah, you're rubbing up against or rubbing shoulders with these people, and you're learning more about yourself and them in this context. And it really is kind of the pot that is on the stove, and then the heat gets turned up and it starts to boil, and we kind of start to see what is surfacing, which is some amazing, beautiful things and some challenging things and some things that we don't want in the pot. So we get a chance to release those things and get them out of the pot. It's just a really amazing opportunity for all of that. And Tim was saying at the beginning about how my original Camino was meant to be for women. It was supposed to just be me and my girlfriends, my friend, women friends on the trail. But then when we did invite the guys, I am so thankful actually it happened that way, because I wouldn't have been able to find the words to describe it to him. I would have
Mm,
done my best. I would have, shown him pictures, and I would have explained things the best I could, but it's the kind of thing that you really have to experience. And by experiencing it together with your spouse, you're even though you're experiencing it in different ways because you have different brains and bodies. It's like, oh yeah, when we rounded that corner, like we came up to the top of that hill and rounded that corner, and then we saw the sea out there, in front of us. I just felt this, overwhelming sense of awe and relief. And then, yeah, maybe your spouse had a different experience, but they're like, oh yeah, I remember that bend in the trail, and I remember that same view, and this is how I took it in, so it's
mm,
just experiencing it together is a very, yeah, I think strengthening relationship strengthening experience. Can also be challenging because you can get grumpy and tired and have aches and pains, but supporting each other through that obviously can be a very relationship strengthening exercise as well.
Right. All of my meltdowns along the way, I wouldn't know how to manage those without. But really, like if I wouldn't have gone on that particular trip, Mark, with Eve, she would have come back, and my mindset at that point would have been, well, I live in Idaho. Why couldn't I can just go out on the trails here. But
Mhm.
it's so much more than that. It's the
Not
community,
the same.
it's the history that you're surrounded by, and the architecture, and just all of those things mingled together in community with other pilgrims. It just there's nothing to really compare that to
Hmm.
here. So
yeah. So you both alluded to it. So when you do face emotional challenges, how did you work through them? And I was just sitting here thinking, gee, I hope there's not a divorce lawyer that's doing the Camino with us, because it could be real tempting to have a, no, just kidding, a private conversation. But anyway, no, hopefully the opposite will happen. But when you're emotionally challenged and you said it, even when you're physically tired, I
Hmm.
mean, it's like what you're saying reminds me of going into missions. I think your greatest strengths come out, and man, does the worst of you come out at the same time.
Absolutely.
Just lay
yeah.
kind of raw and bare, and
Hmm.
it's the tale of two cities, or the tale of two persons. It's the best of times and the worst of times. How,
Yeah.
just kind of dive into the emotional dynamic a bit and how you deal with the challenges. Because I don't want to
Mm.
burn my cork on this. I have a tendency when I'm hurt to get angry, so I want to be a nice guy throughout the whole Camino.
We
Mm.
want you to be a nice guy, but no
Be a
pressure,
nice guy.
Mark.
Um, but that's the thing. If you did the whole thing and didn't ever express some anger, I would wonder, like,
I love it. That's good.
what is Mark holding on to? Why is he not showing up with some of that? Because honestly, like, yeah, back to the release and receive, like, as we get rubbed raw and get to that vulnerable place, half of the point of that is so that we can release whatever shows up that we don't need to hold on to. And so, yeah, what does the word say? Be angry, but sin not. If you're
Yeah,
angry and you
good.
start, cussing and fussing at me, well, that's an issue. But hey, this thing happened, like with accommodations, sometimes there's a glitch or whatever. And like, yeah, it makes me angry that they didn't have the rooms that they reserved for us. And now we have to sleep in a bunk bed with Tim or whatever, so but yeah, anyway, the emotions will show up, and they're meant to. That's part of it. And then the cool thing about doing it as a group, like if it's not just you and your spouse, we had 10 people on the Camino with us last year, and it gives other people that opportunity to support us as well. And so it's not just all on Tim, because I could, the person I was walking next to, I could just say like, oh, this has been, really frustrating or really discouraging, or, this is the thought process I've been having this morning because it's a long day ahead and I just don't know if I can do it. I'm feeling, yeah, I'm feeling the strain of the last few days or whatever, and just,
Mhm.
yeah, basically pouring out that angst or that whatever showed up, and the other person, yeah, hopefully listening well and reflecting well and holding space for that. And then I got to do the same for them, maybe the next day or later that afternoon, So that's the cool thing about being in a group is there's
Mhm.
plenty of people in the mix that, some are needing support, some are ready to support. Some are feeling tapped out and some are feeling filled up. So it's
Right,
good. Hmm.
right. You know, um, I was mentioning this to Tim before we came on, and Linda and I watched a movie on Amazon Prime. It's produced by Angel, but it's with Martin Sheen and his son Emilio Estevez, for those of Breakfast Club memory. And it's called The Way, and the main character is Martin Sheen, and he's an ophthalmologist. And I won't give away the movie, but he faces a tragedy concerning his son, who's played by Emilio Estevez. But it's very good, and the thing you just said really brought out this dynamic. He's out there alone on the Camino, and eventually there are four people that come into his life, and he really doesn't want anything to do with them, with what he's gone through. However, at the same time, by the end of the movie, you see how those relationships with people he's journeyed with have changed his life. And he did a much longer, at least in the movie, track pilgrimage than what we're going to do. But still, that emotional, relational dynamic really comes through well in the movie. And if you haven't seen it, it's we rented it for $3.99, and we really enjoyed it. And perhaps it's because we're going on, but we got a feel of also what it may look like and this kind of thing too.
Hmm.
But what really stood out was what you just said, the emotional dynamic that came through relationships with people that he had no connection with whatsoever. One was Canadian, one was from Holland or the Netherlands, and the other one was Irishman. And they each had their own story. And but that is fascinating, and it was
Hmm.
plays well into what you just said.
Yeah,
Um,
which is the whole point of, pilgrimage. Again, it's a word we don't use, it's a thing we don't do, but we're on this pilgrimage, other people are joining us essentially, and part of the beauty of it is our story joining their story, so that
I,
an intersection of our stories for that week that we're on the Camino. And yeah, there's so much beauty in that, in us knowing more of someone else's story and then them knowing more of
mm,
ours
Yeah.
as we are known to or become known to each other. So that's
right.
a whole thing that's, yeah, just so beautiful.
Well,
It,
it
it kind of,
reminds me also of the Robert Mulholland's book, Invitation for Journey.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
that the whole idea of
yeah.
spiritual formation and I would say also holistic formation isn't merely for what's in it for me, but there's always that component of my life engaged with other people, and
Right.
how do I, bring life to them, and they're going to
Hmm.
bring life to me.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Love
Well,
it.
let's
Yeah.
move ahead.
Historically, Mark, I was just thinking about as Eve was sharing, if you think about it historically, like the Camino was, it's a lot more developed with its signs. You see signposts along the way, markers along the way, but way back when, I mean, pilgrims would just walk out their door and start walking, and that's an interesting thought. Like, and then they would meet up. They would meet up along the way, and they would,
Hmm.
yeah, maybe they would camp out in the same place or stay in the same church or monastery, or yeah. So there were touch points all along the way, but to think of starting out and walking out your back door
Mhm.
and beginning the Camino. So we don't have that we don't have that option, but to walk out our back door and be on the Camino. But a lot of people did back then.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Let me address something right now. Heidi's asked the question: are there any book recommendations on the history of this pilgrimage? Great question. Yeah, that fascinates me too, Heidi.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, Again, once like if you end up registering, there's a whole list of great book recommendations. Also, yeah, podcasts or movies, the way that Mark was just talking about is on there. So there's a big long list of it. We can't share the guide unless people are already registered, just because it is copyrighted by the Way Between. But I don't have any to share off the top of my head, but yeah, if you just want a couple titles kind of thing, we can email those to you as well. Cause yeah, there's no end to now. There's more and more resources, and then more and more books being written of people writing, their story and kind of intermingling that with the history of it and their experience of it. So there's a lot of good stuff out there now.
But let's transition into the spiritual dynamic in the last quarter hour that we have here. Um, what were some of your spiritual expectations before you started the Camino, and how did they change along the way?
Hmm.
Mm.
Did you have any
I think for
beforehand?
me, oh, say that last part again, Mark.
I said I just kind of reiterated the question. Did you have any expectations beforehand, and then how did those morph along the way?
Yeah. I think the first time around for me, I was expecting big, like, handwriting on the wall, or, big audible voice kinds of things, for the Lord to, speak to me in some clear something that was big, big, big. And I was surprised that it was all these little things, but like in nature, or things I was seeing, or just like a word here or there, or an impression here or there, all woven through the day in a way that kind of, I like the metaphor of tapestry. Like you don't you might look at the threads, before you start the tapestry, and say like, oh, this is a beautiful red and this is a beautiful gold, and you see that these are beautiful colors, but you just don't know how it's going to be woven together, or what it's going to create as far as that overall picture when the tapestry is done. So for me, it was more of that, just all these little things, just all kind of woven through the week in a way that I couldn't even see what was coming together until after, and not even at the end of the week. I mean, after, like, you know, a few weeks after being home, or even a few months after being home, as I reflected on that. And then second time around, I had more of that expectation of just like trying to pay attention and tune in to any little, I mean, big thing too, if the Lord wanted to do that, but little thing or big thing that he had for me.
Yeah, well, that's great.
That's good. Yeah. I
Excellent.
think for me, like letting go of some of those expectations around and what my comforts are here at home, and what I kind of lean into here at home in terms of routines and rhythms and structure, that is going to look totally different in so many ways when you hit the Camino. Yeah, we'd have, for example, just even devotional time. Like we'd have a group reflection and devotional time, but I didn't get my hour long in my chair in the morning with my coffee. I didn't do that, but I knew I'd have it along as I was walking, and that was a new, very rich experience for me. And I think I brought that back actually for me, realizing that this is more of a lifestyle choice, that I can actually bring some of this into my day to day here back home, and it doesn't have to be just that 1 week on the Camino. And how great was that? And now it's back to the grind. It can actually be, oh, here's some things that I can do to make my life a little more sustainable, kind of embrace that less is more mentality. And so, but those were some expectations that that I had, but it surprised me that I was able to kind of lean into something different. If at first it wasn't so easy. The first couple days, you're like, okay, can I actually continue on here for another 5 days or whatever? But it becomes more natural every day. Just, oh, I get up, I eat, I walk, I I reflect some, I have some good conversation, then I eat some more, and then I walk some more, and then I eat some more, and then I
Sleep.
sleep.
You forgot to sleep.
And then I sleep. Yeah, I was getting to that. So
Good. So did you mentioned like your own personal devotional time? There's a corporate time, but it almost sounds like you're like in a mode of praying without ceasing. You know, you're just in this awareness.
Mhm.
Would
Mhm.
that be true?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, except when you have those moments like we were talking about, and to bring yourself back. But I think that's just part of the learning and part of the lesson,
Yeah.
Hmm.
part of the
Were
journey.
there any times of like where you had like a deep spiritual moment, a moment of transformation? Like this is, you know, I'm in a position where I'm hearing from God that if I was in Idaho, that I perhaps wouldn't have, you know, and this setting and all this that's going on around me has, you know, been what's provided for this to happen.
Mm.
Hmm.
I think I shared in the last episode we did, Mark, about reading Surrender to Love. Um, let's see. David Brenner.
Brenner.
David Brenner, and I read that leading up to my last Camino, and so I feel like that was it for me on the last one, was just like reading that book and processing it and like receiving that to the
Mm,
point as much as I could, in Idaho, in my chair, having my quiet time kind of thing. But that the experience of the Camino is what really brought that home for me. And so yeah, it was definitely just surrendering and seeing his, I called it a picture postcard, like this picture postcard of how much he has shown me, and does show me that he loves me, the Lord, and through all through that week, so yeah. Anyway, it really brought it home in a way that I don't think I would have been impacted by it just sitting in my chair having my quiet time at
Sure.
home.
Okay.
Mm.
good.
The as far as like some of the things, you know, Tim mentioned, you know, our quiet time, and you know, we usually have our, of course, a Bible or an iPad and stack of books or whatever the case may be. So with the backpack and the 11 liters and this kind of thing, what kind of stuff did you bring? Did you bring an iPad with you? And I'm not going to get back to the body dynamic, but this really ties into what we're used to in our own spiritual formation practices.
Mm,
Did you have a little Bible, pocket Bible, Gideon Bible that you used instead? You know, that you got in sixth grade when you're going to school. Well, maybe it's for more of an elder baby boomer like me. We always got Gideon Bibles in our public schools.
yeah.
So, what did you bring with?
Do so the idea is to, is to keep things light, obviously. And so to really going back to that kind of less is more approach. So yeah, I think I had a my pocket Bible, little journal in my day pack, and a pen to write with. I left my my iPad. So I don't know if Eve mentioned the one option is to just take your backpack. That's you travel with it. Everything's in there. Some people are up to that challenge, and that's your day pack, but it's also everything's in there, right? Others choose to bring a small like suitcase or captain's case and leave that at the hostel or the hotel every morning. The postal service comes and picks it up, takes it to your next destination where you're going to be staying that evening. You don't have to mess with it. So if you feel like, I'm not quite up to the challenge of just putting everything in my day pack and that's it. You can go with that route, which we have done, and it is very dependable and works really well. And so that's where my iPad went. That's where some items went that I knew I'd want them in the evening, maybe, or in the morning at the hotel, but I didn't have to take them in my day pack.
Yeah, that's good. A couple of things here that have come up. Um, Heidi writes, "Is bedding necessary?" Or rather, Chris wrote
Mm.
that, is bedding
Mm.
necessary?
No, every hotel we stay at has towels and sheets and everything. So yeah, that's good. Lightens our load there. And some of the places had a laundry option. So you really want to think of pack, even if you choose the captain's case option, like Tim just talked about, of just really packing light, because we're on the Camino for 6 days. So you really need like 3 days worth of stuff, and then you can just wash it. Or if you don't want to wash, you can just wear it stinky, which is fine too. But you don't bring 6 days worth of stuff because that would just be too much, you know. And then the little towns have laundromats too. So if the hotel doesn't have laundry, so or we just hand washed, you know, like our socks and our underwear and our t-shirts like in the bathtub at night. So yeah, just kind of think camping, but like glamping because you're staying at a hotel. So you don't need bedding and sleeping bags and stuff.
Okay, very good. Uh,
Mhm.
Tim put up something. He put up the book "Surrender to Love" by David Brenner, is the book that
Mhm.
Eve was alluding to. Well, our time is beginning to wind down, so let's touch on a couple more things under spiritual preparation. Um, I think this is an interesting one because is I'm looking at this as not being a one-off. I would love to see us at the Institute incorporate pilgrimage into each year. Um, and so, how did the Camino shape your understanding of pilgrimage in the Christian life? Has this become a part of your spiritual formation or your holistic formation, even?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, Mark, for me, it's been more of a journey of the pilgrimage piece. It kind of goes back to what I was saying before about what can I take from the Camino, or long stretches of time where I am stepping out. So whether maybe someone's listening today, if you've ever done a sabbatical or something like that, like what are some things that you can do during those times, or that those takeaways from those times that you can incorporate into your daily walk? And some of that is mindset. So when I think about pilgrimage, I think about more like, okay, first that's kind of got to be a mindset, right? I have to be trained in that mentally, and that to me is I'm still on that journey. But I think the Camino has impacted me in that way to come back and say, okay, what do I really need? What are what are the true essentials in life, right?
Mm.
And really to kind of think going back to that less is more. I'm not a minimalist, I guess, but I am like kind of on that journey of thinking, yeah, what is, and it also to me it also reminds me when I'm outside of my home context, and the day to day. It also is just a great reminder that there are other pilgrim. I'm a pilgrim. I'm with other pilgrims. I'm walking this. I'm on a journey, and it's eternal in nature, and it is a journey of where there's surprises around the corner all the time. And I just need to like kind of be in more of a receptive place, a receiving place, a letting go and receiving what God has for me. His provision is also kind of, when I think of pilgrims, I think of pilgrims, it comes to mind like gratitude and being thankful for what God provides for me daily. And that's the cool thing about the Camino. Like you show up at you I try to not think about, okay, what's the next place going to look like? What's the next hotel or hostel? What's my next meal going to look like and all that? Yeah, you look forward to those things, but it's really an exercise, a discipline to stay present along the way, with yourself, with God, with other people. So that to me is
Mm,
my pilgrimage journey, I think.
That's a
mm,
real counterculture to the way we are as Americans. You know,
Yeah.
mhm,
what we're carrying, what we bring, what we have,
mm,
how we're going through the day. But I love what you said about, and it really ties into another question I was going to ask, but you've already answered it. It's like the pilgrimage continues when you return back home,
Mm,
because it's been that kind of
mm,
life shaping experience. I would
mm,
say probably the more pilgrimages one goes on, the more that gets reinforced in a person's life.
true.
mhm. Yeah. I'll just say my little kind of, how it's woven into or become a spiritual practice for me is the time that we set aside. So even for training, it feels like about like 2.5 years ago, we just real and this was or I guess after our first Camino, so that, yeah, is like right around 2.5 years ago, like life circumstances were dictating a lot of how we spent our time, and it's with like emerging adult kids, grandkids, and aging parents. So as you all know, those are three things that can, demand your time and attention, and those are three very important things that we want to give our time and attention to. But then you add, working full time and different ministry assignments and different things that, yeah, again, it just felt like everything else was kind of dictating, what we were doing with our time. So by setting aside the time for our long hikes, our training hikes. And then we got a little camper last year. So we're camping. We'll camp for the weekend. And then we'll do a hike on, like, if we get there on a Friday afternoon and then a Sunday or Saturday, Sunday, or yeah, anyway, some combination over the weekend. So the time is set aside, and so we get on the trail, but and that's part of going back to the physical. You have to calendar it, or you're not going to get the training hikes in. It's just not going to happen. So anyway, it's on the calendar. We're doing it. And what we did was, if people were like, oh, we want to come visit you guys for the weekend, we're like, okay, we're camping. Do you want to camp with us? Or we're hiking. Do you want to hike with us? So we're not changing our plan, we're altering it to include them. We're always glad to include friends or family, but we're not gonna, oh, okay, we got to stay home and just host all weekend and change our plans, because yeah, we want to keep our rhythm, and just despite or in spite of what's going on around us, stay healthy, stay centered, stay balanced, those kinds of things. And you can't if you're just like giving it all up for, the tyranny of the urgent kind of thing. So anyway, I think that's how it's impacted me or impacted us, as far as like, finding that rhythm and really guarding it pretty fiercely, so that yeah, we just don't get out of rhythm like we used to, which I'm super grateful for. So
Really glad that you said that, because one of the things that I like to share with directees is spiritual directees is putting the oxygen mask on yourself first.
mhm,
Read a little
yeah.
hard. And what you just said, I think sometimes we feel guilty for doing that. Well, I guess I better change. But
Mhm,
really, you know what? I'm
Mm,
actually going to be best for God and myself and other people, whether it's family,
mhm,
friends, or somebody that I'm going to be serving in some way, or even strangers. If I'm at my best and
yeah.
I'm taking care
right,
of me, and I think
yeah.
sometimes our tradition, well, I guess I have to drop everything for somebody else.
Mm,
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 You know, I see Jesus going along the way, but he didn't drop everything. He still went to Jairus's house, even though, the woman who needed healing was along the way. He
mm,
still was heading to his destination.
mm,
It
yeah.
wasn't like, well, can you come to my house, Jesus, and heal me? Well, no, she came to him. But
mm.
Mhm,
I think that's a great insight. Uh,
mm. Hey,
and we,
I apologize that I have a client at the top of the hour coming in the door here soon, so I do have to sign off. So I
Sure,
got the
sure.
time frame wrong.
Well, we are going to wrap up, so good
Okay.
timing. And I just want to
Okay.
say one thing before we go. If you know anybody else that may be interested in this will be downloaded today and posted to our Institute for Ministerial Wholeness website, and you can go there and you can view it again, or you can pass it on to somebody else. I do want to say the organization that Tim and Eve are working with on these pilgrimages is called The Way Between, and their website is simple, thewaybetween.org, thewaybetween.org. And you can go there and get more information. Um, thank you so much, Tim and Eve Austin. It's been great. Tim, I think our last pilgrimage together was through Tajikistan across the Oxus River into northern Afghanistan in December of 2001.
Yes, that's right.
Was a
That's
very
right.
interesting journey.
Uh-huh. Remember that? Fond memories. That talk about places where the best and worst you can come out of you, right? Thankful for those times.
Yes, and one learns not to throw naan out the window when it's stale.
Oh no, you never do that, right?
That was a great lesson.
Yes, yes.
Well, love and appreciate you both very much. You're dear friends, and it's always great working with you in Central Eurasia, Tajikistan.
Wow.
So looking forward to walking the Camino with you. And Heidi and Chris, if you guys are still on, boy, if you have some time, we'd love to have you guys with us too. That'd be a real treat.
Absolutely.
It would be a treat.
Yeah.
Well, bless all of you. We're going to conclude our time together. And next month, we're going to be on with Nathan and Beth Davis, and we're going to be talking about contemplative prayer and the literal organic brain changes and personality changes that come when we practice contemplative prayer in a regular manner. And it's become one of my favorite times of my prayer time is that time of centering on Jesus and silence and solitude and how it transforms us. And so we're going to be talking about that. We do a two-part series with Nathan and Beth on contemplative prayer and also the science that goes along with it and what they've done in personality studies with people, as well as outside of what they've done with others, neurologists and neuroplasticity, and how that is a literal brain changer, personality changer, as well as spiritually transforming us too. And so thanks so much, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next month, and God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.